We honour her with this. Just a little bit of background. So Narita joined the council as library assistant all those years ago, down here in the Tauranga Library. You've since gone to Mount Maunganui and you've undertaken specialist training in research and reference services. You helped establish the Peppermint Library in 2005, and in 2009 you became the team leader. Over the years, Narita has mentored many staff, both within the library's team and nationally through Te Raupu Whakahau, the Māori Library Workers Association. Under her leadership, the Peppermint Library is a place of manaakitanga, where all the community is welcomed and staff are well supported. Narita, you are greatly valued by the library's team and by all of us here at Tauranga City Council for your expertise, your support, your kindness, and of course connecting all our library visitors. And we have the service that we offer is very important to the community. So on behalf of the council, the community, all your friends and colleagues, I'd like to thank you for your commitment, your leadership, and your outstanding contribution to Tauranga City.
Thank you so much.
And I'd like to give you...
Thank you very much.
Did you want to say a few
yes,
words?
I do.
Fantastic.
Just a little speech. Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you, Mayor Tembe, councillors, Marty, thank you, staff, ladies and gentlemen, and especially my team over there, library staff. When I started in libraries as a returns assistant in October 1995, I did not expect I would still be here 25 years later. I can't say it's surprising though. I found my calling in libraries in high school as a school librarian, and from there went to my very first paying job as a very junior library assistant in 1980 at Taupō Public Library. I have seen changes to the way libraries are run in Tauranga, and I think it's fair to say libraries as their own business entity is my preference, mainly because we had our own IT team dedicated to fixing just library IT problems. With our own team, our systems ran more smoothly. In my quest to move around and experience all I needed to accomplish in my development as a library assistant to now as a community library leader at Peppermint Library, I have set many goals for myself over the years. And it isn't appropriate we are now, through our development conversations with our staff, setting new goals to grow our people. This is exactly what I have been aspiring to do for many years. Lastly, I would like to mention Peppermint Library. I was one of the new recruits for the library when it opened in June 2006. I am still very proud of our building. It has many cool points of interest. I am still very passionate about showcasing the library to the community, visitors and specialty groups that request a tour with us. But last Thursday, just gone, we hosted a very big group of council staff, and I found it quite interesting to reflect that my passion for our special eco-friendly library hasn't changed from when I was the assistant community library leader. We have had many building issues, from eroding actuators to failing heat pumps and air conditioning problems, but in spite of that, we hold a special place in the community's heart. The Peppermint Library and Community Centre is definitely the hub of the community. Thank you.
Kia ora, Narita. Thank you. Amazing speech.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your lovely words, Narita, and great to see all the team here. On that note, I will formally welcome you again and open the council meeting for Tuesday the 17th of November 2020. The meeting is being recorded as always. Please turn phones off or at least to silent. And as always, if people that are speaking could speak clearly into the microphones, please, that would be fantastic. I'll call for any apologies. I don't believe there are any. Thank you, which leads us straight into the public forum. Glenn, Mr. Glenn Crowther, you are very welcome, sir. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Temby and councillors. I just wanted to let you know I'm here in my new capacity with the Sustainable Bay of Plenty Charitable Trust, but I'm also representing the views of a number of Sustainable Business Network members who have come to me on the Tortoise Street issue and have asked if I could speak today. So I'll launch into it. Just a reminder of the context for yourselves, but also where I kind of came in on this, which was a meeting with the Transport Manager at Tauranga City Council in 2015 after the Regional Land Transport Plan was released that year. And in that discussion, I'd taken on a role that year with SBN, and a lot of businesses, of course, were very concerned about transport and transport planning. And so I decided to go to the regional plan and see what were the top issues for Tauranga and the Bay, and was somewhat surprised in a way to see how highly ranked Tortoise Street was at the time, given that the work on that project had not really progressed very far. So over the years I've been involved in a number of discussions with a number of staff at TCC and elected members around this project. So I'd like to acknowledge a number of people just very briefly who I think have put in a large amount of work to try and come up with a really good solution here. There's been a stakeholder group that I was part of, I think it was last year, with Karen and others, looking at an under $1 million project when that was all that was on the horizon. But there are people who are in formal groups, like the Bike Now group that SBN had set up, and Bike Tauranga have put in a lot of time into this, but also sort of more informal representatives like Shane and some of the business people who bike along Totara and other parts of the city. And just a quick sort of recap in terms of there are these different categories of cyclists, and I think what I've been asked to sort of represent in a way is that there is always a need to take into account who it is you're designing cycleways for, what the purpose of it is, and what the needs of those users are. One quick correction, which is it might seem as a minor point, but it's quite a significant percentage difference, which is the I think it was a business case document on page 25. It talks about the US survey of the 4 cyclist types. This was actually the original Portland data before it was tested by analysis. So that the actual version, which was, I think it was just probably a little glitch in that document, that it's a slightly bigger group of people who are in those first 2 categories. And I think that's an interesting thing to remember when you're designing cycleways around the city, but particularly in somewhere like Tortoise Street. And Christchurch has had their own, apologies about the formatting, I had some real IT issues yesterday, but there were even higher, like a very large number in Christchurch that are in that second category. And a key thing to remember is that a lot of those people who are in those first 2 categories especially, they really value their time and really value direct connections. And that enthusiastic group is actually a really key target market to try and get more people on bikes, because Tauranga only has 3% mode share for travel to work, and even smaller for total travel. So what that means is there are a lot of people in those fearless and enthusiastic category who are not biking. And one of the big questions for me is, how do we get more of them on bikes, as well as all the people who are interested and theoretically would get out on their bikes in the right circumstance? So I guess it's just leading up to this slide saying, in all cycleway design, I think the principles that the Bike Now group used, and that a lot of us have sort of worked through with experts in Canada, Australia, Rotorua, Auckland, different places around New Zealand, is that we think that it's optimal to get safe, separated or segregated cycleways, but also have a well-designed network that is well connected, has direct routes to where people want to go, and follows desire lines wherever possible. And that way you take account of the safety, you take account of time. So one of the issues that's come up for people who've looked at this is where are cyclists going to and from? And I know that the speaker who's going to follow me, Kevin, I think maybe doesn't see it as necessarily an accurate view, but all I can go on is what the council staff have put together for this data. So what I've seen is that there are about, through the survey, that there are about 20 people at one end of the road, about 280 at the other end. So I wanted to sort of delve into that a little bit more. And I think it's easy to sort of dismiss it's only 280 cycle movements, it might only be 140 people per day on average, but I think that it sort of misses the context of this being built around the time of rolling out a cycleway program across the whole city, which will increase the number of users. And it also misses, I'm told, probably about 100 people per day who are currently using the footpath that are not being triggered by the counters. So the figure at one end of Totara might be closer to 400. The figure at the other end, though, looks much, much lower. So all I can do is go by what the council data shows, which is that with the project, there will be significantly more people using it, but I guess the question is that just capturing a lot of those people who are currently on the footpath too? So I know in the business case it talks about measuring the increase in mode share. I think that has to account for the 100 on the footpath who are not currently in the measurements. But the big question is, where are they going? So not so good, but I tested it too. This is a shame. But there are 400 odd people on the bridge, close to 300, plus the other 100 who are not counted on Totara. But Hull to Manganui, just in one direction, has over 100. So what we've got there is, potentially 200 of those nearly 300 are actually going supposedly somehow from Totara to Hull or vice versa. And I think that's a really important point in terms of that whole network. And you can see that on the projections that the council's put together, which is the red line showing the heavier usage of cyclists. And you can clearly see that there's sort of like a desire line to get from the residential area at the mount and along Manganui Road there and connect up to the end of Totara Street by the Harbour Bridge. So in a sense, I think that there are, given that I've been in that group who are looking at the short-term under $1 million solution, I think where it's sort of got to is that there are different legs of this. And the Hewletts-Totara intersection where the slip lane is closed, I mean, that is going to be the cause of the travel delay. And that's really an NZTA project as I understand it. The off-road path from Totara, along Totara from Hewletts to Triton is actually quite a short and easy stretch to cover. And I think that's potentially has multiple benefits. It could link through to Manganui Road. And I'm told by the staff that the off-road cycleway from Kawaka to Rata will be permanent as well. So the issue is how to get from Triton to Kawaka and what investment to make in that leg and whether that will service the needs. Is that sufficient to service the needs of these cyclists, including all the ones who want to get to and from Manganui Road? So the initial response after the unfortunate fatality was that it was looking at, I guess, expanding the low-cost, low-risk project, and it was seen as quite a substandard offering because it was going to be a shared off-road path. And fundamentally, that's where the contention is amongst all the people who in some cases for, some cases against this. It's around that issue of, will this cater for all the people who are current users of this road on bikes? And I think there's genuinely mixed views. I'm not here to sort of promote a particular answer for you. I think you've got to weigh it all up, but I think something needs to happen here. It's incredibly dangerous. You can probably look at it in different ways. 82% did support safety improvements, so I think I'm questioning why the 18% don't, but on the other hand, you can also say that 82% actually didn't support the proposed design too. So you can sort of play that either way you want. So I think what it shows us is a real mixed view in terms of the survey. There's a mixed view in terms of the feedback, certainly the feedback I've had from people.
Glenn, sorry to interrupt. Time is up.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we all hear this loud and clear, and thanks so much for the supporting evidence as well. Your comment on the generally mixed views, I think, is very well understood. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Kitty.
Could I just ask that Glenn could have time to wrap up, if that's okay? I'm keen to hear his conclusion.
Sorry, what was the question?
Can we just give Glenn another minute just to wrap this up, if that's okay?
Sure, one more minute, Glenn.
Okay. I guess there are some unanswered questions in terms of the 1 kilometre section costing $11 million, whether for option 2, whether any of that can be incorporated into the bigger project. The biggest question of all from a lot of the business people I've spoken to is the wording around the upgrade between Hewletts and Hull, why it is so uncertain, why it will be so slow. Vital Signs says it's the number one issue for Tauranga residents is transport. The TSP states this is number one priority. And I guess in this plan that's been put together by some of us, the view is that there are multiple things that need to happen. One of them is lowering the speed limit. Another one is following the Bike Tauranga suggestions for the on-road cycleways. But a big part of it is to actually, I think, fast-track that business case. And that's what I'm here today to suggest, that whatever you decide today, the big issue to me is trying to sort out the big picture project and do it much, much faster than is being talked about. I cannot see why a business case cannot be completed in the next 3 years, and I can't see why you can't actually start building Totara Street quite soon after that. To me, it's delaying that is not acceptable.
Very good, Glenn. Thank you for the good wrap-up and points well made. Much appreciated. Councillor Robson, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's a question through you, Your Worship, to the Chief Executive. The presenters raised an issue around the 82% figure, and I've spoken to you about a statement that was attributed to a staff member in the Bay of Plenty Times. Can you clarify for the public, anyone's listening on video, perhaps for people in this room, or get clarification to us? There was a statement made in the paper that 82% of the feedback supported the safety improvements, and this presenter has questioned that, as have many others in the community, that statement. Is it possible to clarify that, or perhaps even correct it?
Yes, look, Brendan will be speaking to the paper shortly, so it's probably best that he actually responds to that at that point.
Very much, everyone. Thank you, Glenn. Much appreciated. I'd like to welcome Kevin Kerr. Kevin, nice to see you again. As Glenn did, you have 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Speaking. Thank you. Good morning, all. Certainly hope to keep it brief within the 10 minutes, Mr. Mayor. It's ironical, in my 4 years of being a cycle advocate, this is the third time I've been in front of council on Totara Street. And I just find that, a real indictment on lack of decision making or where we are with cycling in the city. Glenn's correct. In 2015, it was the second ranked priority in the Regional Bay of Plenty Transport Plan. Since then, just quickly, we had a cycle action plan in 2017. We had a Tauranga Transport Project engagement plan with 760 respondents in 2017. 2018, we had a Tauranga Urban Strategy, a Bay of Plenty Regional Transport Plan, Tauranga Long-Term Plan. 2019, we had UFTI. And now, 2020, we're down to the Western Bay Transport System Plan. Every one of those plans and talks, and we all put submissions in, had a huge, strong emphasis that we needed to do something about getting away from cars, and walking and cycling was a predominant theme within those. In the 3 years or 4 years that we've been doing cycle advocacy, and probably well before my time, we have achieved one designated shared cycleway in Tauranga, and that's on Ngātai Road. And really big thanks to the city planners or the cycle action team getting that done. And that was really around about schools. That to me is a shameful indictment on where this city places cycling. We are a joke nationally. We've got beautiful weather, beautiful beaches, but everyone says don't bother taking your bike to Tauranga because it's unsafe. Next one, sorry. One of our key problems is that we know we need to do walking and cycling, and we seem to get bogged down in what I call paralysis by analysis. And Glenn's presentation is a classic. There's 150 pages I read over the last day and last night on detail in the submission before you guys. I'm wanting to focus on the future because I believe Totara Street is a decision for the future and what's happening with cycling in Tauranga. And I just feel that the paralysis by analysis thing, we could sit here and debate that and go back and have more information coming in another 5 years. We'll still be sitting here and debating what we need to do about Totara Street. Yeah. So I want to focus on, I thought the transport system plan, I've been to 2 meetings on it. It's very aspirational. It's certainly bringing together a lot of what was in the AFTI agreement. One of its key goals was to increase the use of public transport, and I've highlighted up there that cycling, walking and cycling will be easy, safe and convenient. And so I guess the challenge I say to you guys is that you are a partner in this transport system plan, and if you are a partner and if you adhere to those key goals, then the decision around Totara Street is absolute no-brainer, because what we're trying to do here is to create an easy, safe and convenient pathway down probably one of the key strategic cycleways in Tauranga. We ignore it at our peril. This is a strong message, I think, on what will happen if TSP is ignored. It's not about choices, it's really about priorities and how we're going to make our city safe. And it actually mentions in the TSP that some brave decision making will be needed by councils. Glenn touched on this, target users. This is a bit like the climate change debate. It depends what expert you want to listen to. This is pretty much anecdotal evidence from, not just in Portland, from around the world, that the targeted users, and I know the cycle planning team have been considering this, are the interested concerned. Yes, the strong fearless, and we can debate percentages with that group. They are riders who are likely to bike regardless of road and traffic conditions. I was one of those riders. I was a triathlete, etc., and we used to use Totara Street because it was nice, smooth, and it was good to race down at your 40, 50 k's an hour. Are these people actually going to use a shared cycleway, whether we put it on the west side, the east side, or it's segregated or whatever, and where we have a speed limit of 20k? I very much doubt it, people. Very much doubt it. What we're trying to do here is that we have a cycling revolution, or renaissance as I call it, on our hands at the moment. These are people who want to get back into cycling. It's worldwide, and New Zealand is really capturing it. Go to a bike shop and you wait 6 months to get a bike at the moment. We need to make our cycleway, and particularly Totara Street, safe for those people. So a big part of that is removing the barriers that are going to stop those people from cycling. And that's either physical barriers or traffic calming measures designed to slow vehicle speeds. There's a number of measures. Creating the shared cycleway that is down the eastern side of Totara Street is one of those barriers. This is a very good graphic on how people or how cycleways around the world have been designed for all ages and ability. And so you have one area down the left there where they're less comfortable riding alongside cars in a bike lane that's pretty hairy, and then it moves up to where we have designated cycleways and protected bike lanes. This is where we need to get to, and this is what Totara Street is going to do. I think a lot of you around the table here will be aware of what Tauranga people think. Those stats there are pretty overwhelming, and that's why I just find it at odds when I look at these things, and this is from the engagement, the 760 online people that responded to a survey a few years back, and now some people are telling me that 82% don't believe that the Totara Street would be used. It's just, you know, as I said, it's numbers. I spend most of my working life at the moment doing numbers, and it doesn't always show you the picture that's necessary. I tend to look what a lot of people behind me would be doing and looking at what are people wanting in cycling, and they are the people that are going to use it. So Tauranga Bike Tauranga came under a bit of criticism at your last meeting about did it represent cyclists. I thought it was interesting. A lot of councillors made a lot of noise around that. No one had the decency to pick up the phone and ask me who we actually represented. We thought at that time it was best for us to go out and do our own survey. And so that's what we did. We did an online survey. Our targeted group within that survey was cycling fraternity, because they're the groups that we currently engage with. They're both recreational cyclists. We used the Tauranga Cycle Club. There's another big group called Cycle. We use them as well. I'm sorry those stats are a wee bit... we asked two questions. Do you currently ride your bike on Tauranga and if on Totara Street? And if you do, would you use the proposed segregated cycleway? Back one. The results from that were definitely would and probably would amounted to 74% out of 311 responses. That's pretty compelling. The next question we asked then was that if you do not currently ride your bike on Totara Street and there was a safe path there for you, would you use the proposed separated cycleway? Again, our responses were only 84, and that was because we don't know that interested but concerned cycle group. They aren't part of our wider group at the moment, but we know there's a huge number of people out in the community for that. And the overwhelming response for them was 76% definitely or probably would. So that's out of 400 people from an online survey of people interested in cycling, and the 76% overall said that they would definitely or probably would use the cycleway. So in summary, people, councillors, Bike Tauranga has a position that we are thinking of the future here. It's 5 years of talking and doing nothing, and we need to make some decisions that are going to benefit the cycling people of Tauranga. Our vision statement is more people on bikes more often, and we achieve that by making cycling safe and convenient. We have a large majority, we know, of less than confident cyclists who have got into cycling and will use segregated or safe cycleways if we put them in. However, we know that cycleways or segregated pathways aren't convenient for the confident cyclists. And let's say they're 15 to 20%, and we certainly need on Totara Street to identify and look after those people. And you will see on our provisos for supporting this proposal, on number 3, thank you, Mr. Mayor, on number 3, we have said that we are talking to council currently, and we've had lots of talks, we've engaged cycle designers. We want to enhance the safety for those confident cyclists who will continue to ride on the road and not on the segregated cycleway. So, councillors, this isn't the panacea we all wanted. This isn't a nice fancy 2-lane cycleway down the west side that most people wanted. And there'll always be noise from cyclists who don't want to be held up a minute and a half or a couple of minutes to go down Totara Street. And there'll always be noise from certain businesses that get affected. But isn't anything we do in this city noise? If you put a bus shelter outside someone's house, or you do this or whatever, we will always get noise. If we're going to listen to noise, we'll still be talking here in another 10 years with nothing. This is about the future. don't get bogged down in the detail, open your eyes and look at what's happening in our city, and we want to make some safe cycleways. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Kevin. Very well presented and very grateful for it. As somebody who's looking to get back on my bike when I return from medical leave, you certainly have my support, sir. Questions, councillors? Larry?
So thanks, Kevin, for your presentation. Just to be clear, you want us to approve what's in front of us today? Is
Yes.
that correct?
We
Thank you.
do.
Yeah, Kevin, I think you make some very good points. If, in addition to approving what's proposed by the report today, there was an amendment added which basically said that funding be put into bringing forward the business plan and solving the Tocha Street Hewletts issue the prime objective of Tauranga City Council, would you support that as well? And the point I'm getting at there is you know, and everyone knows, that what's in front of us today is suboptimal. The question is how suboptimal and what are the options? But would you support, or would Bike Tauranga, seeing you speaking for them, support an amendment which also said that additional funding was put into bringing forward addressing Tocha Street properly, so we actually did get the sort of service that's needed for those cyclists at the right-hand side of that very, very powerful picture on bikes? Would you support that?
I'd be a fool not to, Councillor. However, the caveat I have around that is that to get the ultimate of what we would all like is going to require 4 laning of Tocha Street. How far away is that? I do not want to be sitting here in another year and talking to you guys again about Tocha Street.
The clarification, it was an and, Kevin, it wasn't an or, it was an and question.
Excuse me, Councillor Robson, our guest is answering your question. If you'd allow him to do so, please.
No, sorry, John, I accept what you say there, yes. Yeah, we would be interested in talking certainly with council, but honestly, we've talked ourselves to death. We've got to take something, and putting that down that side, I believe, is going to, and my people within the Bike Tauranga who mix in a lot of bike groups, is going to achieve a safe cycleway for the majority of cyclists who want to use Tocha Street. And that's really where we need to focus on. Who is this going to be for? Is it for Shane's group that are 20% of cyclists? No, it's not. They won't cycle on that. We know that, but we need to make it safe for them on the other side of the road by improving the lane and the markings, and we're pretty hopeful of achieving good outcomes with council on that at the moment. I'm sorry, that's probably not totally answering your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Much appreciated. Anyone else, councillors? Kevin, thank you. Really appreciate it, and we hear you loud and clear, sir. Moving to serial 3, acceptance of late items. I don't believe there are any confidential business to be transferred in the open. I don't believe there is any, nor is there any change to the business, the order of business.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. On that point, could I make a request, please, that because there's a great deal of interest in the Review and Observer Team report, and I'm assuming a lot of the public gallery will be interested in that, and also, of course, the media, whether we put that in after the Tocha Street discussion. Would that be, otherwise these people are going to have to sit through the traffic and parking bylaw amendment, the Kennedy Road embankment.
Right, thank you,
issue.
Colin. Just give me one.
You. And I'll be here probably at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you.
We can do that. Certainly the staff are okay to do that. Councillors, are you okay with that? All right, let's do that. If we could just go through these minutes very quickly, I'd appreciate that. I'm assuming that there's no changes. But can I just ask you, the minutes of the 14th of April, thank you very much, and a seconder. Andrew, thank you. Any questions, queries on that? All those in favour, please say aye. Against, John? Or what's the question? Can do, yeah, we can do it. All right, let's do 6.1 to 6.4. If everybody's happy to do that, if Larry and Andrew, you would move the lot. If there's no questions on that, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, abstentions and carried. Thank you very much. That moves us then. Kelvin, thank you for your very useful declaration of conflicts of interest. Can I call for any additional conflicts of interest that may have arisen? Deputations, presentations, petitions, nil, nor other recommendations from other committees. So the business 10.1, which will then lead us, Kelvin, into your suggestion, is Totra Street business case. Let's deal with that quickly, if we can do, and then we can move on. Brendan and Karen, thank you very much.
Thank you. I can do a quick introduction, maybe. So we've got Brendan and Karen, who you met before, David Aldridge as well, who's the team leader, Haeranga Tahi. We've got Michael Yonganil here from Flow Transportation, and he's an expert in cycle model development. In support also, we've got Rob Campbell, who's the Bay of Plenty Systems Manager for Waka Kotahi, and Vaughan Roberts and Simon Fendel. They are Principal and Senior Investment Advisors, respectively, for Waka Kotahi. So we've got a team of experts, specialists in the field to support if there are any questions that need that. For context, so this is a follow-up report from the substantive paper that was put to Council on the 6th of October, and it specifically aims to respond to 6 questions that was left with the cycle team at the time. And it asks to approve the business case for implementation, and it notes that the business case is subject to Waka Kotahi approval. And on that point, I'm sure Brendan and Karen will just emphasise the close partnership we have had with Waka Kotahi to date. So it's not like it's any of this is new to them. Before I hand over to Brendan, can I just do a shout out to Glenn and Kevin for their tireless work in this space to assist us and work with us and prod us, and so from the transportation team, thank you very much for the time and effort that you put into this. And I'm going to pick an argument with you, Kevin, about who this is for. I worked for several years in road safety, and often we see road safety specifically pointed at the victims who get injured. But there's another side to road safety, and that's the victims who are uninjured or maybe drive the vehicle. And I would argue with you that this is also for the truckies. This is for the truck drivers as well, who have got very limited visibility from their cockpit and are extremely vulnerable to the trauma that a lack of investment in this could affect. So I just wanted to just... You've got no argument with me. No. My previous presentation after the fatality, I was at pains to point out that we need to be doing this for the safety of truck drivers. Thank you very much. I thought that would be the case. Thank you. So I'll hand over to Brendan. Oh.
Yeah, perhaps if I could just make a few comments too. Trees, rubbish rates and roads. We know everybody has a view and generally everybody's an expert in each of those fields. The difference with roads though, we are dealing with people's lives and safety needs to be paramount in our mind for all of the users. So as Nick has said, this report was put in front of Council a number of weeks ago. 6 questions were asked and they'll be responded to by the team. But ultimately, road design is not something that should be done by committee. It should be done by qualified experts. And we have a team of qualified experts. We have some recommendations in front of you, and it's our recommendation is that you follow the design that has been put in front of you. Just hand over to the team.
Thank you. Just to address the press statement, so I didn't intend to indicate that 82% support these changes, just that 82% support safety improvements on Totra Street. Just in terms of this report, I'll just do a very quick introduction. So The existing cycle infrastructure on Tota Street is dangerous due to the narrow cycle lanes and high percentage of HCVs. I mean, we're sort of running around 25% HCVs. Without changes, further death and serious injury accidents will occur. There's just no way of avoiding that because of the mix of vehicles we've got there. So we've designed a shared path on the east side of Tota Street between Hewletts and Kaiwaka, and then on the west side from Kaiwaka to Rata. The design's been undertaken by some of the leading experts in cycle design in New Zealand. We've specifically brought the expertise up from Christchurch just because they know how to do these. They've done very similar environments and they've been implemented and are working. So we've taken all of those lessons learned into this design. One thing I'd just like to point out is in the future, the cycleway north of Dominion Salt is likely to remain unchanged, and there's a very good chance that we can leave the other end also unchanged apart from a few sections, even with a future upgrade of Tota Street. So investment here is not necessarily investment that will need to be ripped out. It potentially could be incorporated into a long-term design. Just the other point that we would like to just raise is that based on experience down south, these similar arguments about not all cyclists will use the facility, those same arguments were raised there. We had a lot of avid road cyclists that were like, oh, there's no way I'm going to ever use these shared paths. What we did find is, unless they're out on a training ride and speed is definitely the priority, if they're just biking, you do find that a lot of cyclists, once there is a safe facility there, do actually use them. They start to prioritise safety over expedience. So I'm not saying all do, but we do find that some of those fast and fearless cyclists will still take the safer option if it's available to them. In terms of the report, I'm going to take that as read, and so we're just happy now to answer questions that may arise from the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Team, anything else to add to Brendan before we excuse me, go to questions? Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Clout.
Thank you. Look, just a couple of questions from me. Your response to, do you have a response to Kevin Kerr's suggestion that even if we approve the cycleway, that we need to undertake safety improvements on the road for those sort of fearless cyclists, and some are saying it's up to 20% of them. So that's my first question: is can we still do something at a reasonable cost that will help with the safety of those?
That's a good question. Look, our target audience is the interested but concerned, and try and get more people onto bikes. We will pick up a lot of existing cyclists on Tota Street. They will go off-road because it is a lot safer. There could be some upgrades done to the existing carriageway, and additional paint marking could help. I know that it has been discussed with the working party. NZTO have got a working group, and they are going through that to see whether some additional on-road markings can be installed. It does need to be consistent across the country, so it needs to not conflict with already cycle markings and bus lanes, etc. like that. So it is being considered at the moment. I can't say a straight yes or no whether it will be implemented or what it will be, but Bike Tauranga have come up with some ideas that we are looking at, and we are talking to the National Committee about that.
Just in advance of that, we have got a program. We've gone down and tried to remark all the coloured markings that are at the intersections, etc., because they had got quite faded. So we are trying to upgrade that to at least create safe space when you get to the intersections. One of the concerns I think we have with the current road environment is the space that's currently available for cyclists is well under width. It's sort of only 1.2 metres. So I don't know if we would want to actively encourage the interested but concerned on road. So I think one of the things we've got to be very careful about is if we colour it in a way that looks like that is the cycleway, are you effectively encouraging your less confident cyclists to be on road, given we know that that's not the safest solution?
Thank you. No, that makes a good point. And my second question, thank you. Given that we know there's a fair number of commuters that are going from the sort of residential suburbs of Mount Maunganui, particularly on the eastern side of Maunganui Road, and they're coming down Hull and Triton, or going home, Triton and Hull. Are there any safety concerns about that route? And longer term, would that be something that we should be investigating as well? Thank you.
Look, the cycle model clearly shows there is a desire line through that area, and it will need to be looked at. I think we need to look at Totara Street itself as the key major cycle route, and then we'll have these local connections that will need upgrading. And I mean, same thing in Christchurch, we've done the same thing, we've got a major cycle network, but we identify there's these secondary links that need to be visited and upgraded as well. And I think you'll find that with the upgrade on Totara and the crossing improvements of the likes of Hull and Triton, it will potentially encourage more cyclists to come along Hull and use that crossing facility instead of going down the alternative route.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I'm prepared to move this from a chair, if I can get a seconder. Heidi, that'd be great. Happy to continue taking questions, of course, but I think from my perspective, having listened to the speakers, both Kevin and Glenn, and the work that's been done on this, the debate that's happened over 3+ years, you know, it's pretty obvious to me what needs to happen, so I'll be absolutely supporting this. Of clarification. Well, if there's no more questions, are there no more questions? Very good. Just, you know, speaking from the chair on the substantive motion, I just want to thank the team for the work they've done. I want to thank the submitters for your patience, your endurance, and your tenacity at coming here year after year after year to do this. We do, and I think that, you know, a good quorum of this council, and most certainly the executive, are highly motivated around turning Tauranga into a cycle-friendly city, and we recognise wholly that we've got to invest in the city for that to happen. I know I've often said that I think, you know, Tauranga should be cycling centre for New Zealand, and Kevin, you made the point, and a very valid one. It is, we have a beautiful climate. It's mostly flat. You know, I know there's some hills around the outside, but it's mostly a very flat environment in the scheme. We live in a temperate environment, and boy, if we can link these cycleways up, we will have an incredible opportunity from, goodness, pretty much Waihi to Lake Rotoiti, if we do it properly. And why would we not have a vision and an aspiration to do that for the future of our city? So, team, thank you. Community, thank you. Let's just do this. Heidi.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Thanks to everyone who's put all the time and effort into this. This is going to be connecting in a safe, separated cycleway two of our biggest centres in this city, and it's going to connect our city, who more people are going to be living, working and playing here, to our most fabulous beach, as well as being able to get people who work out of their cars. So it's a great start. It's kind of more hooey, less hooey, more doughy, and this is, hopefully we're going to be getting this one done. It'll be amazing for our city, so thanks.
Thank you, Heidi. Any other councillors? Councillor Hollis.
I agree with setting up cycle safety, but I'm very concerned with the planned versus reality of this, where the desire lines are being taken into account on half of the planned route. We've got desire lines on Ocean Beach Road, which go all the way to Papamoa. We've got Monganui Road, which is also a desire line when I looked at the heat map that Glenn put up earlier today. And of course, we've got the connection between Totara through Triton and Hull not being looked at. And now what we're doing is saying, in my opinion, that we're creating or trying to create a wonderful new desire line to force those people to change their habits and come down Totara. And I think it is not going to be as successful as we think. And that money that we spend on the Triton through to, let's say, Rata, may not be as well spent. I would prefer to see it at the southern end of Totara Street. The other thing I'd like to bring up is that with the 1.7 to 2.3 minute delay caused by the new cycle route, that will affect anything up to 10,000 people a day and could equate to about 16 years of lost productivity when calculated out over a year as well as adding around 120,000 kilos of extra carbon dioxide and particulate matter sitting right on that piece of road that we're trying to clear up. There are a bunch of things that this is going to have negative impact, and I think we should all be aware of that before we make a decision.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Councillor Robson.
Yeah, interesting topic and interesting process. First, I'd like to thank the staff. I was one of the more demanding councillors at our last meeting, asking for origin destination data, asking for the sort of information that I thought should have been presented in the first report, and you've gone away and come back with that. And of course that's opened up some questions. I'm slightly conflicted. I wondered whether to bother coming this morning. Some people in the community were told this was a done deal and they should be considering moving their premises already, and they had that given to them before this meeting even happened. And of course that does concern me somewhat. If people in the community feel that decisions are being made outside this chamber before things come to this chamber, I think we have to be very careful in our enthusiasm that we don't cross lines. In that regard, speaking to the topic, I note that the 2 deaths that have occurred on Tocha Street both occurred effectively on the road with people who were obviously felt comfortable enough to go on the road. And yet, and it seems to me that although those deaths were the impetus in theory for re-energising this project, which was the right thing to do, we keep talking about a target audience that doesn't include those that died, which I find disconcerting. My feeling is this is yet another example of where staff are working within a scope that hasn't been properly considered by this council. We've been too narrow and probably too constrained in our thinking. Ironically, we've lacked vision and ambition when designing this project. I thank the staff for acknowledging that something does need to be done, and they are looking at that west side route, because we do need to make this on-road experience safe for those who are on-road. We've lost 2. I don't want to see us lose any more. And facing another family of someone who's died on that road and telling them, hey, look, don't worry about it, because we've got a lot more young people cycling on a safe separated cycleway on a Saturday afternoon, is not an answer I'm prepared to stand by. Right? I just think we need to broaden this. I used the word and earlier on when I asked a question of Kevin, and I think we've missed the and on this. We need to do both these things, and that's the irony about people talking about vision and ambition. We need to make off-road cycleways attractive to people. We need more people on bikes. I'll take no lessons from anyone on this. I paid for my own flights to Christchurch to experience what it's like, and it's great. Yeah, I paid for my own flights to Christchurch, and it's great, and I'd love to see that here. But there are different types of user, and we need to address all of them, and we need to address all of them properly. I think the questions answered by Kelvin and Clout were bang on the money. We have a desire line we need to sort out through Triton and through Monganui. We actually need to sort out Monganui, and that's a circus. We shouldn't try and impose desire lines. The best way to create paths for a park is to put down grass and then put concrete where there is no grass after your first year. Look, this project is part of the necessary solution, but it has been constrained, and I know not why. I think the onus on that constraint sits with the 11 people around this table. This is on us. We haven't given you a broad enough brief. We haven't given you the promise of the resources necessary to make this work. I haven't decided yet. There may be other speakers and convince me whether I'm comfortable saying yes to a solution which doesn't address the dangers of the people, the dangers that killed 2 members of our community. I'm not comfortable there. So it's mixed. I think there's more we could do, and at not a lot more money. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you. I'd ask you to start the clock if you could, because I think we do need to keep to our time, but I was going to ask if you would ask Councillor Robson to indicate whether he was voting for or against, but he's made it clear at the end that he hasn't made up his mind, so I'll try. Thank you, Kevin, for your presentation. I have sat here for some of those meetings in the past where we have got close to doing something on Totara and then pulled back and so on. And I went to Christchurch and looked at what was happening there when I was chairing the committee last term, and I was approached to be a champion for the cyclists in the city, and I think that would have been a bad choice. I'm pleased that we've been joined this term with some other cyclists such as Heidi and the Mayor. But we are here at a decision, and I thank you for your clarity that you want us to go ahead, which I support. Totara Street's a very difficult road, and we will never get it right, and we will be... What we have done in the past is just kept asking for more and more answers and more information, and everybody having their own ideas about what would work and what wouldn't. We do have a great team here now in this council that have given us a recommendation, and I intend to fully support it, though I know it may not be the optimum, and some of the presenters this morning have said so. But this is not the only thing we're doing. And I place a lot of trust in the TSP, which we have launched, which will be looking at solutions for 30 years. Totara Street needs a lot of work, not just for the cycle issues, but for the port issues and for the way in which some of those businesses have access. You know, the port has a lot of land there too, and we need to work with them to try and come up with a better solution. But we can't wait for that one. I'm prepared to recommend spending $4 million of ratepayer money today, which is what it is, more or less, net of the Waka Kotahi subsidy. It will be, I think, worthwhile. It's still another part of the overall citywide network of cycleways, which I fully support as part of improving public transport, cycleway alternative methods, and also still getting things right for those who, like myself, use a semi-electric vehicle to get around town. So I will support this, and I hope we all will, unanimously. I don't believe it's time to add more to it. That is a process for the TSP, that is a process for the LTP. Let's keep it simple. Let's simply support the recommendation before us today and get on with what needs to be done in that part of the town.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. Councillor Kitty.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you to the staff and everybody that's worked on this. This is an extremely difficult decision to make. First of all, actually I am a cyclist, have been a cyclist for many, many years, and also have 3 teenagers that are continuously on their bikes, biking around town. So safety is imperative for me and my family as well. However, I have also been talking to the business owners down Totara Street, as well as Bike Tauranga, people who are both for and against this, commuter cyclists as well as recreational cyclists. We did have a cafe catch-up at Fusion Cafe, and a lot of information that came out there was incredibly interesting and quite different to some of the narrative that I had been hearing. The commuter cyclists, yes, will still continue down the west-hand side. They're not going to use the other side because there is 5 to 6 crossovers that they're not interested. Time is money to them. The recreational cyclists would be happy to be on a bike anywhere in the mount apart from Totara Street. I'm not sure that Totara Street is the best place to be encouraging new, young or recreational cyclists. I know that some of the community feel this is a done deal, and for that I'd like to apologise, because that has certainly not come from anything I have said, and I am really sad that some people are looking for alternative accommodation, looking for alternative places for their businesses. This was not great to hear at all. The route down the eastern side is of concern to the businesses there, for the fact, 1 or 2 actually said quite rightly, the trucks turning on the west-hand side are very capable truck drivers. They do know what they're doing. People that are going in and out on the eastern side where the cycleway is proposed, a lot of them are going into the fusion cafes. They're going in with their families and whānau to get bait for their fishing shops. They're going into tyre places. They're going into the caravan to grab food. They are not as aware as the people that are on the western side. This is also a concern to the business owners down there, as well as recreational cyclists. Councillor Morris and I took a wee bike down there, which, as we can imagine, was great, us both lycra clad. Councillor Morris did nearly get hit off his bike by a nice big Ford Ranger. I am sure the driver of the Ford Ranger wasn't intending to hit Councillor Morris, so that's debatable at times. However, he was not concentrating because he was coming out, he was grabbing a coffee and he was off on his way. This is a massive concern for us. I would love to see that we would get this done properly. My father always told me, if you're going to do a job, do it properly. I feel this could be a plaster type solution that is going to last not 5 years now, but 15 to 20. I think we need to think further afield. I think progress in the city is imperative. I think safe cycleways are imperative. I think the safety of our community, of our family, of our friends, of our whānau is imperative. And I think we need to do this properly, not a plaster solution. Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I do, in response to that, I do have a certain view of men who drive Ford Rangers. They're compensating for something. That being said, in terms of Tortora Street, look, it is a start, but I think it's important to mention today that it is not the end. And I have listened to the frustrations of Mr Kerr this morning when he spoke in the public forum, and it kind of reminds me of the situation that, you know, a hungry person is going to have is going to accept bad food, rather than no food at all. And so, not suggesting that the Tortora Street solution as proposed is inherently bad, it's just that it is not optimal, it is not perfect, and there is a lot of work to do there still. We've got the situation where Tortora Street does need to be four-laned in the future, and it does need a grade separated flyover onto Hewlett's Road. And in fact, it actually does need to be a road that is owned and maintained and depreciated by the New Zealand Transport Agency, Waka Kotahi. The reason for that is it meets the thresholds in terms of heavy traffic, so it should actually be declared a state highway or a minor state highway. But this is the best that we have at the moment. I too, hear the concerns that my colleagues have raised around the table around the desire lines. So the traffic data, and I think we've got it in table 3 there, is clear. People are using Triton and Hull Road to get onto Monganui Road. That is preferable for cyclists rather than the northern end of Tortora Street. I do hear the argument that if you do improve the off-road facility along the northern part of Tortora Street, you will attract more cyclists. What does concern me is that I hope we're not, sort of putting out the expectation that this is enough, because it's not. So our commuter cyclists, I'm absolutely convinced that once the cycleway is in place, our local media photographer will be able to go down there and see a cycleway potentially empty with a commuter cyclist or 2 or 5 in a peloton riding down Tortora Street, because it is the quickest, most efficient way for confident cyclists to get down there. And so that's an issue. This is the start. It cannot be the finish on Tortora Street. I'd also, mention, just in regard to the budget, we have a decision later on in our agenda regarding the Kennedy Road Reservoir, which, due to, was it an administrative omission? We're looking at, not the reservoir, it's the dams. Yeah, but due to an administrative omission, we're looking at, maybe another $3 million there. And I bet you that doesn't get anywhere near as much debate as the $4 million spent on Tortora Street. Councillor Robson, did mention that he
has seen some plans for the western side, and I think that that's the next stage. We do need to tackle the western side. We do need to get our commuter cyclists safe as well. So thank you.
Councillor Morris. Councillor Clout, and then I'm going to, when you've spoken, I'm just going to ask Christine to just give us a bit of a context for this, where it sits in the LTP. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be fairly quick. Look, I think we all recognise this is a suboptimal solution, but it is part of the solution. And I really appreciate Glenn and Kevin coming and speaking this morning. I think it sort of helped clarify my own mind where I should be voting for this. So I will be supporting this, but also I want to make sure that we're making this decision with our eyes wide open. We do know that this will increase vehicle congestion up to the Harbour Bridge, and I think in years to come, we could well be vilified for that, but I just want to make sure that we are all understanding that by voting for this, we are effectively voting for an increase in vehicle congestion. So, I'm voting for this with my eyes open on that. Also, we understand that there are many retailers, businesses along the eastern side of Torture Street who have voiced concerns about this, and Councillor Kitty expressed some of those. So again, it's something we are aware of. What I would like to see is that we work much more closely with the Port of Tauranga. We know that there is the log way station at the end of Hull Road, and that accounts for some 300 to 500 heavy truck movements a day. And I'd like to see us working with the Port of Tauranga to relocate that way station so that there's less truck movements along Torture Street. So the other thing I really want to do is make sure that we monitor usage of this new cycleway, and because I really want to make sure that this so-called 20% of commuter cyclists that will stay on the road is in fact 20%. I've got a feeling it's going to be more than 20%, and therefore the usage of the cycleway may not be as high as we're expecting. But if it helps to increase the total number of cyclists, has been indicated, then I'm all for that, because we know that cycling is a way of the future and will help us achieve our multimodal transport objectives. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Clout. Christine, if you could, please. Thank you.
So a little while ago, the elected members resolved to approve the Western Bay Plenty Transport System Plan, and for that, those projects within that transport system plan to flow into the long-term plan process. So there's been some discussion today around the long-term solution for that whole sub-area, which we're describing as Tauranga, Hull, Hewlett's area. What Transport System Plan does is it prioritises all of the required investments across the whole of the transport network, looking at that from a multimodal perspective. The number one project of everything in the $2.7 billion worth of packages was this Hull, Tauranga, Hewlett sub-area project. And where that is sitting is in the Transport System Plan. Has part of that is what's called a STIP, an implementation plan. And there is a plan for each of the partners that were part of this process, including NZTA, TCC, Regional Council and Western Bay. For this Tauranga, Hull, Hewlett's area, there is business case money provided for in the first 3 years. What that is set at $7 million for NZTA and $5 million for TCC in years 0 to 3. Then in years 4 to 10, there's another $3 million from NZTA identified and a further $2 from TCC. So a total of $17 million for business case analysis, and that includes the design element of the whole package. And then the construction is provided for in years 4 to 10. That construction split is 112 million NZTA and 41 million for TCC, so 151 million. All of those are flowing into the Regional Land Transport Plan process, because it needs to flow into there to get any level of funding from NZTA. And as I said before, it flows into your own LTP process, and you need to determine whether or not, relative to everything else, it's a priority and how much of it you want to fund and provide for through the LTP. If it is funded, it will be a multi-partner project, so there's been some discussion around Port of Tauranga Port of Tauranga, Kiwi Rail are both partners in the Transport System Plan project to date, and they would continue to be partners as we work through the solutions for the entire sub-area of Totara, Hull and Hewletts. So hopefully that's helpful.
Very helpful, Christine. Thank you very much. Councillors, were there any other comments to be made on Totara Street? In that case, I will put to you the substantive motion before us, recommendations A, B and C. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Can I see the hands, please? 1, 2, 3. That's Robson, Kitty and Hollis. The motion is carried. I take it there's no abstentions otherwise. The motion is carried. Thank you very much, Council. Now, that leads us to, on your agenda, 10.11. And I just, excuse me? Peter, yes. Thank you. Shall we take a small break? Yes, indeed. How long, Peter, do you think? All right, well, in that case, given it's only 10:42, shall we do the traffic bylaw and get that off the... Thank you very much, Council, which then takes us, bear with me, back to...
10.2.
10.2. Thank you, Robin. Alrighty. Will, are you here? Nick? Oh.
It's just coming back in.
Okay. Nick, we just got one minor delay, so we're going to use 10.2 traffic parking bylaw amendment. Do you want to speak to that? I'm not sure if Will is here today. Brendan, great, thank you. Sorry. A bit of a change again. 10.2, Brendan. We thought we'd deal with the traffic parking bylaw amendment immediately. Thank you.
Okay. It's the most exciting report of the day. So, as we've done before, these are really just the incremental changes that we've done through changes on street. So it just legalises work that's either been done or is planned to be done. Happy to take any questions.
Right, thank you very much. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Cloud, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brendan. Just in summary, is it fair to say that over time we are making it less and less easy for residents to park their cars in a residential street? In other words, we are having more and more yellow dotted lines through our city. Is that a fair representation?
The only time we're putting broken yellow lines in residential streets is where we've been specifically requested by those residents. We don't have an active program of going out and doing it. We're just responding to CCMs or requests from residents to have the parking banned. So there's not an active campaign to reduce the number of car parks, but yes, over time, obviously there is some disappearing.
Thank you, Brendan. Councillor Baldock.
Just a little wee one, if I may, Brendan. On Pies Par Road, we are shifting the bus stop. Can I be so hopeful as to think that might be outside a residence that is going to approve a bus shelter? At 27, I think we're moving it from 21 to 27.
I'm not sure if we've asked that question, but we can.
You? Councillor Hollis.
Just based on consumer requests to put yellow lines on, is it possible for a consumer to request the removal of yellow lines outside their house as well?
Yes, it would be. So when we put broken yellow lines in, we go out and do an assessment. So if someone wanted the yellow lines removed, we could assess that and work out whether it would be feasible to take them away.
How often does that happen?
I don't think it's that common. Generally, once the broken yellow lines are in, I don't think we have that many requests to have them removed.
Councillor Robson, happy to second. Any, beg your pardon? Sorry, Councillor Border was happy to move. I just happy to second. Councillor Robson, let's take your question. Right, any other questions, Council? If not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions, and carried. Thank you very much. Just waiting again. So let's move to 10.8 and keep chipping away at things which are, which is the meeting schedule. Coral, are you around at all? We thought we'd just do 10.8 while we're waiting for Linda's return. Meeting schedules 2021. This surely can't be overly contentious.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, a meeting schedule for 2021. It's fairly full. We have provided some opportunities where in week 5, where we do not have meetings, that they've sort of we've given you some sort of semblance of a break through that. And we've particularly given you 2 weeks around the consultation engagement period, where I think we've only scheduled 2 meetings in there. We've had a slight hiccup on Friday. We met with regional governance people and our equivalents, and we realised that we've got a bit of a clash with the regional land transport submission hearings with our own LTP hearings. So no, that's not happening. Oh, they're in April. Oh, sorry, Robin's sorted. So it's all good to go. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Coral. I'm happy to move for the chair. Thank you, Larry. Any discussion on that? Any other questions? Questions, Steve?
Coral, just confirming, there's only 2 LTP meetings before the 4th of Feb? 3rd or 4th of Feb? Only 2 from now? Only 2 in December or something like that? So there's only 2 meetings on the... Is it 1 in December?
Yes, we've got 1 and we've got 2 in December, and then I think we come back on the 3rd and 4th of February.
Just wanted to confirm that because the Review and Observer Team report talked about significant number of meetings being in that period. So thank you. Just 1 meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just a quick, speaking to it, I want to really acknowledge the way the thing's been put together and the blocking out of no meetings bits in our calendar, because it's something we've asked for a long time, because sometimes people plan holidays and things. We now have councillors with families, which we didn't back then when we're all pale and grey and so on. So I just thank the staff for working this out so that we can make plans through the year to refresh ourselves and be ready for our meetings. Thank you, Coral.
Indeed, and here, Larry. Thank you very much for that. Council, all those in favour, I'll just put it to you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions, and carried. Let's move now to 10.4, the renaming of the upper section of Ohauiti Road to Upper Ohauiti Road. Is there any discussion on that? Paul, you're speaking to this?
I think I need to. I think it's fairly self-explanatory.
Yeah. Is there any discussion on that? Thank you, Kelvin. Andrew, thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against and carried, thank you. 10.7 is the delegations related to the RMA. Janine, are you around? CJ, thank you.
So under the NPS urban development, there are some mandatory requirements in terms of changes to city plans. We currently don't have a delegation to enable staff to do this. Given there's no discretion and it is a mandatory requirements, we're suggesting that just for efficiency purposes it be delegated to the Chief Executive, which means that we can procedurally just get on and give effect to that.
Thanks, CJ. Larry, you are happy to move. A seconder, please. Tina, thank you very much. Any discussion on it otherwise? All those in favour, please say aye. Against and carried. Thank you very much. Yeah, 10.9, the appointments as a result of Councillor Arbery's resignation. Are there any questions on that from anyone? Can I just thank those councillors, particularly Councillors Baldock, Granger and Hughes, for accepting those positions. Bill, great to have you back in the Wastewater Management Review Committee. Again. Yep. Are there any questions, councillors?
To the Tangata Whenua Tauranga City Council, what's the situation about making that a committee of the whole? It's been the will of people for some time that should be a committee of the whole. It seems somewhat bizarre given the relationship between TCC and Tangata Whenua that it's not a committee of the whole. Do we have a time on that? Can staff give us a...
Through the chair, that is the will, I understand, of the Rangapu and the Tangata Whenua Committee. Carlo's in the back. I don't know if we have a time frame, Carlo, but I understand a paper will be coming to you on that topic.
Yeah, so some staff are working on a paper to cover the pros and cons of that, so it should be coming to you guys early in the new year.
Really new. Thank you. All right, folks, any other questions on that? If not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour, please say aye. I beg your pardon. I thought we'd done that. Can I have a mover? I'm happy to move for the... Kelvin, thank you. And a seconder? I'm happy to second. All right, Heidi, you can. There we go. Kelvin and Heidi. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? And Kerry, congratulations to all those members. We might just take just a quick break, I think, just to grab a cup of tea, gather your wits, 10, 15 minutes, and by then, let's hope Linda's back. Thank you. that I will be moving this from the chair, and thank you, the Deputy Mayor, Tina Salisbury, is seconding it. We have the review and observer team at the table, and I'd invite Peter. Are you going to talk to this initially? I'd invite you to speak to the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think it brings us any particular pleasure to be bringing this report to you today, but from the point of view of the review and observer team, our work covers fundamental issues that are really important to this council and to the future of this city. I'm not going to labour the points that are made in the written report, and I note that we briefed the councillors on Friday on the substantive matters that are contained in the report. However, a few things that I would like to address. And the first is to remind ourselves that Tauranga City Council is a really significant undertaking. It serves New Zealand's 5th largest and fastest growing city. It has an annual operating revenue in the order of 273 million. It has significant operating expenditure and a $258 million capital program every year. It owns $4.2 billion worth of assets. This is a significant undertaking, and the people of Tauranga deserve and demand effective governance of those assets and the issues that this council is responsible for. The Local Government Act requires that before every election, the Chief Executive produces a pre-election report that sets out the issues that the council faces. That pre-election report for Tauranga City Council sets out a number of significant challenges with respect to capital expenditure delivery, managing and meeting community expectations, risks associated with new buildings and development, land supply, transport issues, transport funding challenges, resilience to economic changes and natural disasters, increased environmental standards, and council accommodation. Those by themselves, in the view of the team, mean that whoever was elected in this term would have faced a very challenging mix of issues, and amongst the most challenging in the country. We also note that many of the issues that are identified in the pre-election report have their genesis over a number of years where successive councils have failed to address issues. And perhaps the most obvious of those is that the accommodation challenge arose in 2014 and has not yet been resolved. In addition to the things that were identified in the pre-election report, we've identified a number of other things that, in our view, any council would have needed to address in this term. First and foremost amongst those is the need to rebuild trust and confidence in Tauranga City Council. Second, and to expand on that, the sort of very public failures that previous councils have had in relation to Bella Vista, the council car park building, the U-turn on the Willis Bond development and other things, to us suggest that there's a significant issue in terms of the trust and confidence with which the people of Tauranga hold this institution that need to be addressed. Second issue that we identified was the need to address historic underfunding and delivery of capital infrastructure in order to support growth. The third was to increase revenue fast enough to support the increase in borrowing that will be required to deliver critical infrastructure and respond to growth pressures. Fourth, the need to quickly zone and provide services for land development sufficient to address known and immediate supply shortages of land available for residential development. Fifth, the need to support the Chief Executive to maintain momentum and cement in place a highly performing team and ensure that this council does not repeat the sort of historic failures that led to the Bella Vista disaster. And Seventhly, the need to complete a representation review. Those are never straightforward, but absolutely fundamental to ensuring effective local democracy. Our process has involved observing a significant number of meetings, meeting with all councillors, engaging with a number of external parties, and reviewing a very large amount of background information, recordings of council meetings, emails, reports, and so on. We've observed a number of positive things and indeed many effective formal meetings, but we make the following observations. This election saw a large intake of new councillors, and that always brings challenges with it as to how you go, in essence, from a standing start to being equipped to make serious governance decisions. And in our view, we've observed a number of briefings where the level of detail is such that there's a significant number of councillors that are present but not necessarily engaged, and where we think the executive team needs to think quite hard about the level of detail that they are pitching briefings at in order to lift the council out of the detail and able to focus on the strategic. Our sense is that collectively the understanding of governance roles across the current council is limited, and the report provides some examples of a tendency to be focused in operational detail rather than operating at a more strategic level, and a tendency to be reluctant to trust and accept professional advice, and an inclination to want to dive into detail, both of which in our view get in the way of making strategic decisions. We noted the absence of a clear strategic direction and a propensity to make U-turns, which calls into question the viability or ability of this council to work as a partner. We reached the conclusion quite early on that the battle for the mayoralty did not end with the election and is alive and well, and that has a whole range of knock-on effects in terms of the way this council functions. The report addresses a number of poor behaviour, lack of trust and inability to work together issues. And in response to what we heard and observed relating to the behaviour of elected members, the team makes the following observations. There has been a significant breakdown in trust and confidence within the council between elected members. There is a strong tendency to address political differences on a personal basis, attacking people rather than the substance of the issues or ideas that are in question. The behaviour of the council is the collective responsibility of the council. All elected members have a responsibility to uphold the reputation and standing of the institution. The current suite of behaviours and the apparent lack of collective responsibility to deal with them is a major impediment to rebuilding trust and confidence in the council, and a major distraction from the very serious business of governing Tauranga. If as much effort was devoted to actual governance responsibilities and finding ways to work together has been given to what has been described to the team as point scoring, code of conduct complaints and the relitigation of issues through both social and print media, the council will be making far better progress. And failure to break out of the pattern of behaviours that has so far characterised this term of office will put in doubt the council's ability to deliver a sound long-term plan that addresses the needs of its community. The team has little confidence in the ability of the council to change without assistance. Other observations: the current state is putting significant pressure on staff and results in significant key person risk, relating in particular to the position of the Chief Executive, despite the high standing with which he is held. We also make in the report observations about the number of meetings and the level of detail that's gone into the impact of the by-election and the Mayor's impending leave of absence. So the conclusions that we reach then are that the current situation is further reducing public trust and confidence in the council, preventing the council from addressing the underlying problems, risks and challenges that it faces, placing the council at risk of failing to meet the needs of its rapidly growing community, placing at significant risk the council's ability to deliver a sound long-term plan, creating an environment that does not support the exercise of wise stewardship or sound decision-making, adding significant and unnecessary costs to council decisions and decision-making processes, requiring the Chief Executive and the leadership team to spend such significant effort to support council decision-making that the ongoing change process and day-to-day management of the staff is at risk, resulting in significant key person risk within the staff of the organisation, and this has all been a significant factor in the decision of one councillor to resign. The report canvasses a number of possible solutions, ranging from removing the council and appointing commissioners, which is an intervention that the Minister of Local Government could make, and we note that of the external people that we spoke to, there are a number, in fact the majority, that would strongly support that intervention. We canvassed a continued role for the review and observer team. However, we weren't confident that we would necessarily make a great deal of difference, given what we've observed to date as a lack of personal acceptance of the role that individual elected members have and are continuing to make in the current situation. We canvass in the report the council moving on by itself, and we recommend a number of things that we think could be helpful if that's the decision that you make today, including governance training for elected members, a revised protocol around asking for information, establishing more effective and better resourced office for the Mayor, a shift away from long briefing sessions and changes in the way in which staff engage with you, streamlining the meeting schedule to provide more time for preparation and far less reliance on lengthy and verbal briefings. However, we are not at all confident that proceeding without some form of external assistance will deliver the level of governance practice that Tauranga requires. The option that we recommend is that the council request the Minister of Local Government to appoint a Crown Manager and Observer. To take the Crown Manager role to take responsibility to assist the Council to address the underlying growth and development issues and pressures facing the city through the development and adoption of its long-term plan, and including the preparation of the draft plan, consultation and community engagement on the draft plan and the significant issues facing the city, the hearing and determination of submissions and the adoption of the plan and setting of the rates in accordance with the plan for the 2021-22 financial year, and act as an observer to assist the council to address its behaviour and performance issues and restore trust so that the community and the council can have confidence that it will function effectively after the term of the Crown Manager has ended. This recommendation is not made lightly. There have been relatively few interventions by the Minister of Local Government in New Zealand local authorities, and by and large, where those interventions have taken place, it has been, as I described on Friday, after the train wreck has happened. The intervention in Kaipara District was well and truly after the construction of the wastewater treatment plant that was the catalyst for the public reaction against the Kaipara District Council. It was in the midst of a rate strike that meant that the council was in serious financial difficulty and had questions over its ability to continue to function given the level of non-payment of rates by ratepayers. Clearly, Tauranga City is not yet in that situation. We are concerned to make sure that things change well before you have both the cause of the problem and its consequences manifest. We would be really happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. I just want to clarify the motion that the Deputy Mayor and I've moved and she's seconded. It does include the request to the Ministry of Local Government for the appointment of a Crown Manager. So happy to take questions. Well, you're happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 questions, 2 for the team and 1 for our Chief Executive. So, question 1 for the team.
if a Crown manager is to be appointed or called in, does that Crown manager have the ability to set the rates at a level that many in the community would find unpalatable? For example, double-digit rates increases. Does the Crown manager have the ability to do that? First question.
So, if a Crown manager was appointed in terms of the what we have proposed, yes, they would have the ability to direct the council to set rates, and equally they would have the authority to direct the council to adopt a long-term plan. Having the authority to do that does not mean that a Crown manager needs to exercise that responsibility. So the way the Act is constructed, a Crown manager has a level of discretion. The Crown manager also has two key responsibilities it has all of the same responsibilities as a council would have in making decisions, to understand the views of the community, and is required to consult with the council before issuing a direction. So, in essence, a Crown manager in this circumstance provides a circuit breaker to ensure that a long-term plan can be adopted that does address the issues facing the district.
Thank you. My second question relates to a possible solution that you haven't put in here, which is a Crown observer in the first instance, rather than going to this point of having a Crown manager. What would be your view of having a Crown observer? And if there was an observer, what would the transition look like if that observer was unhappy with council's performance? What would be the next step you would envisage could happen after that?
So we have not proposed the appointment of an observer without a Crown manager. And the reason for that is we see the most substantial risk facing this council and the community relates to the adoption of the long-term plan. And there would simply not be time to go through a process of having an observer come and do stuff and then subsequently have an intervention to protect the long-term plan. And therefore we think it's prudent to move at this point to request the appointment of a Crown manager, and even that process takes some time and requires a cabinet decision. In terms of the impact of an observer, as we noted in the report, for there to be change in behaviour, it first and foremost requires a level of personal acceptance of responsibility and a willingness to make changes. We haven't seen a whole lot of self-awareness that gives us confidence that there is that level of acceptance or that willingness to change yet.
Thanks very much for your answers. I really appreciate it. And my question to the Chief Executive, this is a hypothetical question. If there was one or several elected members who would choose to resign in the next wee while, what would be the latest date that they could give you notification such that the by-election would line up with the existing by-election with the Otamotai Pies Park ward? Purely hypothetical, of course.
I'd suggest that that date has passed.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. I've had the privilege of reading a Macready-Winder report recently, the one on BVL, which you commissioned, and that was reasonably articulate and obviously, ready for publication. Just in terms of this particular report, which we received at 4:15 p.m. yesterday, and I just had a brief look at it. Well, actually, not a brief look. I've had a good look at it last night, and I can see that there are at least 30 paragraphs which have got either errors of fact, spelling errors, grammar errors, syntax errors, random words inserted. And I note you've got in recommendation C that you suggest that this report goes to the Minister. Is this a draft report? Because it doesn't seem to be in a format, both in terms of factual errors, but also it's replete with spelling errors and other grammar errors. Is this in a format that we can send to the Minister, or like the BVL report, are you sort of submitting this as a draft report for comment, and then you produce a final report? Because it doesn't seem to me that this is a final report that that your sort of establishment would put out there.
Well, first and foremost, this is not a report by McGreedy Winder Limited. This is a report by the Review and Observer team. And it's important that we all understand that. Secondly, my apologies for any typos or grammatical errors. We did our best to deal with proofreading in the time frame that we were trying to work on, but it is our intention that this is a final report and not a draft. And to the extent to which there may be errors of fact, I'm sure that we may have a difference of view on some of them as to what is fact and what is not.
A number of the errors can be categorised under misdefining elected members. So through, it looks as if, and this is just my observation, it's either been written by three different people and brought together, or it's been written in three different pieces, because in a number of cases the word councillors is used where it clearly means mayor and councillors, or you could use the collective term elected members. Now that's something which unfortunately has worked its way into the One News story this morning and also the Bay of Plenty Times, and they have quoted the word councillors rather than mayor and councillors, or you could use the term elected members. So that's something that gives a particular flavour to the story which could be damaging to council's reputation. So is there an issue there with the definitions, because it's not consistent all the way through?
So my apologies, we had endeavoured to remove the use of the word councillors and replace that with elected members. In all instances in this report where the term councillors is used, that is intended to include the mayor and all elected representatives.
About 20 instances where councillors is used instead of mayor and councillors or elected members, yeah. Third question, in terms of errors of fact, yes, some may be debatable, and it is your report for you to write, but some are clearly errors of fact. And what is the way in which we should address those? Because we have not seen the report until 4:15 yesterday. We had a meeting on Friday in which we discussed some of the elements, and the word councillors was used quite a lot in that. But we have had no opportunity to look at the report as written, and spelling and grammar and that sort of sloppiness aside, we haven't had any opportunity to correct factual errors. And I'm not talking about matters of opinion. I think there are actually factual errors in there as well. So if we're going to submit a report to the Minister, it should, of course, pass the proofreading test, but it should also be matters of fact. And you're, of course, entitled to your opinion. So what process would you propose that we go through to get to that place?
I think that really depends on the significance of the matters of fact that are concerning you, Councillor Morris.
They are significant, and there are a significant number of them, at least 30. How would you propose we deal with that? Would it be appropriate today to go through paragraph by paragraph to flag issues that you may want to identify? Because obviously you've got to correct the spelling and stuff before it goes to the Minister, but would it be appropriate to go through paragraph by paragraph to raise those issues today?
My view is no. However, without any sense of the scale of the factual errors that you are referring to or believe there are here, I'm a little bit at a loss.
Yep. Thank you. Asked and answered. Councillor Baldock.
Well,
I mean, I think that is an issue that needs to be resolved somehow. But I certainly didn't see a lot of factual inaccuracies in the report. But a question to you, Peter, and Linda and Basil. But Peter, particularly because you have been appointed, as I understand it, as a Crown manager before, albeit after a train wreck. And I think possibly in light of Councillor Clout's question about just an observer, it might be an observer that observes the train wreck. How long do you think it would take if we were to resolve today to accept your recommendation and request the Minister to appoint both a Crown manager and an observer? How long do you expect, given there's not much precedent, obviously, from the way they operate, but how long do you think it would take for that person to be identified and appointed?
My sense is that it would not be possible before Christmas, so it would be sometime in the new year would be the earliest that it could work at. And as I noted, to appoint a Crown manager, the Minister of Local Government needs a cabinet decision, so there's a process that needs to be worked through. There's also a process of requiring the Minister of Local Government to engage with the council on receipt of a request, so that would take time to work through.
Councillor Hughes.
How does a Crown manager work in practice when you're in meetings? Say we had a decision like this morning around Tautara Street, and how does that person work? Do they have an involvement at that stage during council meetings, or is it all before the council meetings and then you come in?
So, in terms of what's proposed here, if I back, a Crown manager has a particular area of responsibility. So the two that have been appointed in New Zealand previously was myself and Kaipara, where the area of responsibility for the Crown manager related to all litigation relating to historic rates non-payment. So it was very clear that that was the extent of the brief of the Crown manager, and the only area in which I could exercise any decision making. With respect, the other example is in Christchurch City Council, where a Crown manager was appointed following Christchurch City's loss of accreditation as a building consent authority, and the scope of their responsibility related to the council's activity as a building consent authority. What does that mean? Well, it means that in terms of all other decisions, the council proceeds as normal to make decisions and exercise governance. And in this instance, in terms of what we have recommended, the focus of the Crown manager is on the long-term plan for 2021-31, which means that the decisions that you made this morning around cycleways and other things, which is all the day-to-day and normal business of the council, would continue without any role from the Crown manager. In terms of what we recommended, the Crown Observer would have a role in terms of observing the performance of the council in discharging those activities, but the scope of the Crown Manager would be defined to a particular set of things.
Just a couple of quick questions, thank you. So do we have an indication, just for the ratepayers that are out there listening, how much a Crown Observer / manager will be costing the ratepayer?
We haven't done that, but my sense is significantly less than the budget that was allocated for the full involvement of the review and observer team over the balance of the period.
Just supplementary to that, would it be important or critical for us to have that information before we make a decision, do you think?
My sense is, in the scheme of the issues that you are facing, that is not a significant question for you. I mean, we're really talking about the ability of this institution to meet the needs of its district, and as I said, in terms of our sense of what it may cost, it is our belief that it would be less than the budget that's been provided for the review and observer team.
And just regarding the interviewees and the key stakeholders, some of which I have never met but really keen to meet, especially if they've had input into this report, yet I haven't met them. I'm just wondering, were all hapu and iwi groups interviewed as well as ratepayer groups around our city who obviously pay the rates? And wondering if the Main Street organisations of Greerton, Tauranga and Mount Maunganui were also interviewed in this process.
So as is clear from attachment 2, we did not speak to a group of ratepayer groups. We did endeavour to speak with the 3 chairs and chief executives of the Tauranga Moana iwi. We were able to secure meetings with 2 of them, so there's one that we did not meet with. In terms of the other external groups that we met with, our focus on who we spoke to was driven by the nature of the issues that we were seeing and their potential consequence, and stemmed and goes back to and what is it that this council needs to address in this term, which is informed significantly by the pre-election report.
And just supplementary to that, was it your team that decided who would be interviewed?
We worked with the chief executive, but we provided indications as to the sorts of people that we would like to see, and worked with Marie and others to make sure that we had the necessary meetings set up. We were actively involved in identifying who we wished to speak to. So, for instance, the engagement with the council's insurance broker was at our request because we were concerned about whether there would be decisions that would impact on the council's insurance or credit rating.
And just final question, so would it be fair to say that, I mean, we had 45 minutes to an hour with you in our interview. Thank you very much for that time. Did all mayor and councillors get the same interviewee time, so we all had 45 minutes to 1 hour with you?
So we spent some more time with others than 45 minutes to another. Some councillors requested a second meeting, and we certainly met with Councillor Robson for a second time. Yeah, I think that's all I need to say.
Yeah, not a question, Your Worship. Permission to make a statement with regard to the response from Peter Winder to the question asked by Councillor Dawn.
Well, I think we're still at questions at this stage, so if there's any other questions, I'll take those first. Thanks. Councillor Baldock.
Again, Peter, as having been a Crown manager, 258W of the Local Government Act does speak to the recovery of expenses, and it is the Crown, first of all, that covers the costs. I don't know what happened in Kaipara as to how the ratepayers there eventually covered the costs, but it's worth, I think, us noting that it can end up as a debt to the Crown. It's not necessarily as it was with you, where we initiated your contract and are paying. Could you comment on that?
So certainly in Kaipara, the council and beyond them the ratepayers paid for the costs of both the commission and subsequently the Crown manager. I would note, however, that the fees that are paid are based on the Cabinet fees framework, which reflects the heavily discounted public sector approach to how you pay for people that are exercising statutory authorities.
Peter, any other questions, councillors? Councillor Morris.
Thank you. I thought I might take the opportunity just to look at one of the factual things that came out today. We had the elected members' calendar for 2021 as part of the agenda today, and I asked a question of democracy, asking how many meetings on the long-term plan there are before the mayor's proposed to come back from wellness leave. And it was identified that there is one meeting, one that possibly goes over 2 days. And yet in paragraph 67, it says that this means there are significant gaps when council must substantially complete the draft long-term plan for public consultation. So given that we only have one meeting while the mayor is on leave, is that statement accurate?
Yes, I believe it is. And the reason for that is, well, under the Local Government Act, the mayor's role is to lead the process, and clearly the mayor will be absent. And secondly, you have a vacancy, and it is my expectation that through the whole of that period, you will be thinking quite long and hard about what needs to go into the long-term plan.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor, excuse me, Hollis.
Yeah, this sort of goes a bit towards Councillor Morris's view of some errors and some thinking issues. One is that there appears to be a couple of paragraphs, I can find them, hang on. Paragraph 90, that suggests that what we must do is restore trust before we have good performance, when the opposite is likely to be true. That good performance is what builds trust. We talk about the things that have happened in the past, including the Harrington Street car parking building, the Phoenix Park. We've got a base track that was shut for 2 years, a whole lot of different projects that went towards removing trust through bad performance. I don't think we can have it the other way around and try and build trust first. So I'd like to think that that paragraph was altered. Hang on just a second. Sorry, B2, paragraph 90, B2. There's another example somewhere which I can't find right now. I go as far to say that there are evidence-free assertions within the document. There are a number of contradictions, but what I would like to see is some form of glossary that talks about things like, what does dysfunction mean? The word dysfunction is used, but paragraph 37 suggests that we have performed competently throughout our time here, including setting the AP. Paragraph 37 discusses that. So which is it? Dysfunction or doing okay? As first-term councillors, it does take time to learn the process here. Bringing in a Crown manager to oversee us may be useful, but every single term and every single council, there are new councillors that have to learn that process. Has it been easy? No, it hasn't. I don't think this report addresses anywhere near what the problems are. I think it's...
Point of order, Councillor Hollis, we are at questions. Is there a question in our immediate future?
Sure, there is. I don't think it addresses the problems appropriately. Do you feel that this report has addressed all of the issues, or for whatever reason have you softened this report for anything else?
To the extent to which we have softened things, as is noted in the report, we have not attributed blame or cause, because in our view that would be counterproductive and get in the way of change. And therefore this report quite clearly says that the whole of the council needs to take responsibility for the situation that you are in. And that was a very deliberate decision, despite quite a number of people saying to us, it's all the other person's fault.
So Morris.
Thank you. Just in terms, a couple of questions. First one, just in terms of the people interviewed, did any of the interviewees declare an interest in terms of a relationship with the mayor or a councillor?
No, we don't believe they did.
Okay, that's interesting. Second one is regarding paragraph 51, and if you go through the document and do Control F and look for the word councillor, you can change all of those to elected members, but there's one at the bottom of paragraph 51, the last bullet point refers to elected members, thankfully, but I'm not sure that it gives a correct interpretation of what happened. So it says allegations of score settling in a reported eruption where elected members, that's plural, suggested settling their, again plural, differences outside the council chamber by means of physical violence. My understanding is that an elected member suggested settling his or her differences outside of the chamber by means of physical violence. So that kind of looks like there's a brawl, but it was one elected member, that's my understanding, that was involved in that allegation. So is that something which you think, on reflection, in order to give an accurate picture to our media and also to the Minister, that's something that should be changed to more accurately reflect what actually happened or allegedly happened?
What we wrote there reflected the nature of the understanding that we gleaned from what people had said to us.
Another question was, it talked about, and this is perhaps relevant to that, that you investigated a number of issues that were raised, but you chose not to investigate a number of allegations. How did you choose which allegations to investigate? Which allegations did you investigate and which ones did you not investigate?
I think that what I said was that we chose not to address things that went to apportioning blame.
I can, if I can find the paragraph, refer to some were looked at, and I'm just wondering which ones were looked at and why were those ones looked at as opposed to others?
Yeah, I can't off the top of my head recall which ones as we went through the process, we reflected on what we were seeing and what was an appropriate way to deal with what we were seeing. And about halfway through, came to the realisation that trying to apportion blame would not be very helpful, and revised our approach.
Is it just supplementary to that? I mean, is it paragraph 56 you're referring to, Councillor Morris? The team did not consider that it was necessary or appropriate for it to explore all of the allegations that it heard. Is that?
Moving on, folks, is there any other questions?
Sorry, but I don't see the word "some" in there, Councillor Morris.
It talks about it was did not consider it was necessary or appropriate for it to explore all of the allegations that it heard, and yet clearly there's some allegations in there that you've explored, and you talk about an elected member is how I would characterise it, allegedly threatening another elected member to a physical altercation. So, yeah, how did you choose which ones you were going to look at and which ones you weren't?
I think if you read paragraph 51 correctly, that's the list of bullet points comes after the words, "this extended to comments reflecting." So that list of bullet points reflects what we heard, not what we investigated.
I suspect that exhausts the questions, it seems to. Oh, you have another one. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. There's, again, there's the Control C thing in terms of councillors, but there's also the headings, in which the entire section is sort of set up, and it talks about a large intake of new councillors. And does that include the Mayor? Because the Mayor is new.
As I said previously in answer to a question, Councillor Morris, yes, in this context, councillors means elected members.
Okay, thank you.
Motion, a procedural motion, Your Worship. Under section 25.2D of standing orders, I'd like to move that the business lie on the table.
In that case, I'll need to put that to the vote. All those in favour of the report lying on the table, please say aye. And can I see a show of hands, please?
Sorry, can I
6.
Can I ask a question? in regard to that?
Yeah, you can, but the motion is...
Point of order, it is a procedural motion.
Yeah, I understand that, which is why I was about to address that. Can I see...
What? Yeah. What does that mean?
Do you have a date or meeting time to readdress this?
Under 25.2D, that's something lying on the table, there is no requirement to specify a future date and time. However, it would probably be appropriate, I believe, to bring this back at the council meeting on Friday. But there should be no discussion. This should be done. I'm at risk of breaching standing orders. I don't do that.
Well, to you again, I just want to see a show of hands, to be honest. Can you hold your hands up high so we can see those that want this to sit on the table? The motion is carried. This is Councillors Clout, Robson, Kitty, Morris, Hollis and Granger. And all those against? So it's myself, Councillors Baldock and Hughes and Deputy Mayor Salisbury. Can I just thank the Review and Observer team for the efforts you've put into this, the work that you've done, and we look forward to talking with you again, it would seem. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, question to the Chief Executive. Given that, as per usual, when we receive reports or entities receive reports, and I refer to the BVL one, BVL board had the opportunity to look at the draft report and provide comment for the report writer, and he chose to do whatever he wanted to with that. This report that is now currently lying on the table was provided to us at 4:15 p.m. yesterday and suggests some pretty significant changes to our democracy. Is there an opportunity for elected members under some sort of chairship to discuss the issues that are clearly with this report? And I mean, seriously, there's over 70 issues here. You know, some of them are as minor as spelling and grammar, but this is not something that we should be sending to the Minister as is. So we need to, is there some sort of a way through some chairing where we can address these issues and then hopefully it can come back to Council and the Review and Observer team can then send a complete report without factual spelling, grammar, syntax errors, misspelling of names of councillors, community members, etc. We can get that off to the Minister.
Look, I'll consider that and come back to Council.
Supplementary, if I may, since we are having a bit of a general discussion. If you would consider that ultimately this is the Review and Observer team's report, if we're going to use a parallel of the BVL report, which not quite fits, but if members make aware of their concerns and so on, but ultimately the report is theirs and they don't adopt amendments that simply because even a majority of members may consider should be changed, if that would be the parameters. Could you clarify, please?
Likewise, I'll consider that and come back to Council.
Thank you. Folks, moving on with the agenda, can I direct you to 10.3, the Kennedy Road Embarkment Dam Scope and Budget Adjustment?
Long-term plan? We're going to go to...
Oh, I was picking that up from... Okay.
Half an hour till lunch.
Yeah.
Do Kennedy Road then? Or do you want to do LGP?
Okay, sorry, just a bit of advice from the staff here. 10.5, long-term plan. Paul and Christine, thank you very much. Sorry, guys.
So we've been reporting to Council over many months in terms of the LTP process and the work streams that are flowing into that. The information is now starting to flow out of our financial and corporate systems, and this was the first formal opportunity to report to you the outcomes of those. Picking up the key requirements of council in terms of the Local Government Act is to manage your expenses and revenues and to act prudently in a way that promotes the current and future interests of the community, and to make adequate provision for that in the long-term plan. There are also matters that the Review and Observative team have just spoken about, so I won't re-emphasise those. So in terms of understanding the current and future needs of our community, there has been a program of work over the last 3 years to clarify that and get some more detail around that, specifically the Urban Form and Transport Initiative, which was a multi-million-dollar investment to have clarity on that. The Western Bay Transport System Plan, which you approved in October, provides direction, priority and investment levels to deal with the transportation issues across the entire network, affecting all the parties that contribute to that. The Community Facilities Investment Plan, which you have been workshopping over the last few months, which identifies the need for significant community amenity, particularly in aquatic indoor facilities, community halls, etc. That is under development and will be reported to the Urban Form and Transport Committee. And the Resilience Program, where the last council, through the last LTP, approved a few $1 million to get better research and understanding of the natural hazards that the city is exposed to, and understand more accurately our assets and how they are impacted by resilience risk. That is under development. You've had one formal report, and there'll be another one on the Urban Form and Transport agenda next week. In addition, you've got some central government requirements, and most specifically the National Policy Statement on Urban Development. It very clearly requires the council, as a Tier 1 growth council, to identify and meet projected demand for both business and residential land. It specifies that you shall have what they describe as a competitive margin, so you must have 20% more than the projected demand. And it says very clearly that the council must ensure that there is adequate infrastructure to support the development of that land, and that in the medium term, being the 10 years, which is the 10-year plan period, it must either have sufficient infrastructure in place, or it must identify and provide for that infrastructure within its long-term plan. And then in terms of the 10 to 30 years, it must either be in the infrastructure strategy or the long-term plan. So as we had indicated as we were starting on the LTP process, that our expectation was that once all of these pieces of work came together, there would be a significant gap in terms of the amount of investment required to deliver on all of these community needs, and that which would be available within the fiscal envelope. So it's probably pass to Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. So as Christine alluded to, this is the first tranche of information coming from our corporate planning system. We spoke earlier about the two scenarios that we're creating, Scenario 1 and Scenario 2. So Scenario 2 at this stage, and we still have a considerable amount of work to do on the numbers, but at this stage, 4.3 billion is the number coming out of Scenario 2, so that includes all the things that Christine has just referred to. We've also done work around that Scenario 1, which is 3.7 billion at the moment. So obviously that gap isn't large at the moment, and therefore what we've done is basically added another 2 additional scenarios in, which looking at what are actually the fundamental bare basics we can bring that number down to, which will be the true Scenario 1, and then various scenarios that increment for that at various funding packages. So we haven't done the funding work at this point in time. It's really just to bring to you the large capital issues that exist. We've got 4.3 billion in there. We've got capacity at this point of somewhere around the 200 to 250 million mark based on our current funding mechanisms. So that's 2 to 2.5 billion of capital that we can fund through there. So fair to say there is a huge gap that exists between there. So the work that paragraph 36 refers to, the sort of the core outline of some of the areas, which is looking at what our revenue capacity is, looking at capital prioritisation, some of the new initiatives that we've spoken about in terms of project delivery, and then looking at other funding and financing tools. Now, just with the other funding and finance tools and other reforms, and I'll include water reform within that, we're working on them, and we hope to have some through the long-term plan, but there's nothing actually in play at this point that we can actually firmly hang our hat on in terms of solutions. So they are very much work in progress, those things. So that's probably all.
The only other matter to draw specifically to your attention is in paragraphs 40 to 42, which relates to the audit opinions. The the Office of the Auditor-General is required to express an opinion on the long-term plan and to express an opinion on compliance with the Local Government Act. In 2009, we faced ourselves a similar situation that resulted in the draft LTP being qualified because it couldn't meet the dual requirements of demonstrating meeting the needs of the community and prudent financial management within the fiscal envelope. Our expectation is that it's a likely potential outcome for this LTP as the issues are of a far greater scale than what they were when we were looking at the 2009 LTP. So we just bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Christine and Paul, and can I thank you for all the work that you and your teams have done on this so far. There's a long way to go. Folks, I'd like to move this from the chair. It's pretty obvious what...
Can I have a question?
Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Just on that point, Christine, regarding the 2009 report, that actually, the breach was occurring, I think, out in year 7 or 8 or somewhere like that. It's in the report there, I saw it. Whereas all we're seeing in this report is up to 2025, whereby from both scenario 1 and 2, with very low rates, we're still seeing it complying. So I'm worried that when we work on these scenarios, we and the public, but I mean we see more of it, but the public are not seeing the impacts in the whole 10 years that are frightening, perhaps. Can you comment?
Just say that the charts that are included only show the 5 years and they only work on a 200 million capital program, so at higher levels it will breach earlier on, and we will bring that in fullness to the December meeting.
Just supplementary, if I may, because we began, this term of us all elected with the realities, and before COVID, we actually signed off on a 12.7 when we were told by you that we had to look at somewhere between that and 17. So when I see these public documents going out still with 3.8, 4.7 and stuff, to me I worry about the jump that has to come post-COVID and how we need to, as early as possible, so if it's December, we have to be able to start showing the reality of what we're looking at.
That will come on the 10th of December meeting.
Look, thank you for this. Paragraph 20 is a good start, but obviously I suppose I'm interested in how we convert the CAP figures to op-rev figures, because ultimately all the discussion invariably centres on funding, who pays. So I believe there is a significant, interesting enough, and I don't wish to embarrass Mr. Winder, but Mr. Winder pointed out in conversation that we have a major revenue issue as a council, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. But I'm also of the clear understanding, absolutely certain understanding, that the big hole in our revenue is publicly obvious and been available to us for years, and we've chosen not to go there. I suppose my question is, at what point will we see, without any predetermination of who pays, what that funding, that op-rev requirement will be flowed through the 10 years? Because that's critical to our discussions, and that drives, certainly I believe, what Councillor Baldock wants to see, and I want to see as well, engagement with our community on what we're doing and what it costs. So will that come in December 10? Because there's quite a bit of work to schedule your CAP programs, as well as your OPEX, and then what flows from your CAP in terms of OPEX into annual op-rev, which then drives, obviously, your funding, assuming there is no golden gosling, to quote someone.
Yes, it will. So what we will do at the council meetings in December, we'll bring the scenarios with the various funding and financing packages that sit with each one of those. So that will actually show what the rating and any other revenue requirement will be there. Purpose of this was really to show that there's, in some ways, two conversations that will be part of that. One is the issue around the balance sheet. The other will be the issue around the funding. This is there to really show that we have a significant balance sheet issue that will need to be addressed in some way through the four elements that are reflected here.
Supplementary, Your Worship. Would it be fair to say, Paul, that if you can address the funding issue, i.e. if you can identify sources of funding for things, it's much easier to address the balance sheet issue? Is that a fair comment?
I think the size and scale of it will be, this will be very much an and conversation, so there'll need to be solutions on multiple fronts to actually address both issues that effectively sit there. Any additional funding will obviously help with the balance sheet issue.
Thank you.
The questions? Already done.
Happy to second? Already done? Happy to vote for?
I think Larry seconded, did you not? Yeah, thank you. All right, Councillor, I'll put it to you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, abstentions, and carried. Thank you very much. What time is lunch, just so I can plan? 12:30, is it? All right, so shall we go now back to 10.3. Kennedy Road Bank, and just let's see if we can get through that. Dam scope and budget adjustment.
Can I introduce...
Thanks, Gareth. Thank you.
Gareth
no,
John and Brendan Bisley to talk to this item. There are a couple of items I would like to draw to your attention, and that is that Kennedy Road was completed a couple of years ago, and under an old dam requirement, which now means that if we're wanting to develop further, we need to upgrade it to meet the standards of the New Zealand Society of Large Dam current requirements. The other issue I'd like to draw to your attention is the project budget that sits in the current budget of $2,390,000. And looking at that, it was obviously obvious to the delivery team that that wasn't going to be sufficient to deliver the project. Went back to the people that had taken it up to that point and found out that it was always their intention that a budget of about $6 million was the right cost, the right value to deliver the project. So in between in shifting from a planning to a delivery component and getting the right number in the budget, there was a failure, and we have looked into a sort of a forensic analysis of that and try to find out how that happened, and we're still looking at that. I haven't got any answers for you at this point in time, but the point I wanted to make is that the value or the cost of the project has not changed. This is a means of getting the right budget allocation for it, and particularly in this financial year, which would mean that we could possibly have it delivered by the end of the year. So I'll hand over to Gareth and Brendan.
Thanks, Nick. I think that's a good lead-in. I guess I'll just open it to questions at this point.
Councillor Robson.
When questions are finished.
Councillor Bullock, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm hopeful that the potential of the drill thrust, can be a reality, and I'd certainly support the additional spending for that. Can you give some? You've had probably a little bit more look at it since the report was written. Is there more certainty of that being achieved? Because to cut through that road now would be...
That's correct. We've done additional boreholes on Kennedy Road and some additional CPTs, and as of today we'll finish some horizontal pilot shots through where the face of the drill shot would go. It's all looking very positive. This contract in particular is an ECI, so we have a contractor on board working with our designers to run through the various risk management exercises to ensure that when we do select a trenchless option, that we've ticked off all the boxes. So yeah, the additional geotech's looking promising. We're also looking at procuring the steel casing. And even as early as yesterday, we're looking at reducing that diameter, which would reduce the cost as well, which is probably not updated in that report. But yeah, we're working diligently to solve this issue, the most cost-effective way possible.
Thank you. Happy to second when questions are finished.
Yeah, thanks for that. Aside from the administrative error, I have a concern with the stormwater in general. What's being done with the downstream blockages and the rest of the stream down to where it joins the K stream? Because that area there looks to be where the risk is for flooding.
That's correct. So there is another dam to be built just downstream of the Kennedy Road Embankment Dam, which is Dam 5. And then there's a quality or water quality wetland basin to be built upstream of Dam 5 to account for the issues down in the K Valley.
Is there a time frame for Dam 5 and the wetlands?
At this stage, it's contingent on land purchase. So our property team are working diligently with that landowner and acquiring a solution or a negotiating price for that portion of property to accommodate the dam in the wetland.
With the road closures and such, how many people are being affected by Kennedy Road, the upgrade?
There should be very minimal if a trenchless option is selected. So there might be reduced speed limits down to 30 k's because there'll be trucks ingressing and egressing through both sides of the embankments. But our goal is to have that road operational throughout the works.
Other questions? We have as I understand it, a mover and a seconder. So I put that to you. Council, all those in favour? Speaking to the motion.
Yeah, look, it's important to reflect on this. I grew up with John Hanlon down the dam, cried the fantail, and many years later we praised the dam. I think there's a message there that we need to give pause and think in the round about where we're trying to get to, and maybe we don't anticipate some benefits. This is a proposal, a recommendation that really isn't up for discussion. There isn't an alternative. That being said, I'm pleased that we've adopted the kaupapa suggested by the ROT and not sought to apportion blame for administrative error. And I just think that's important to note, that we have an organisation full of human beings. Both sides of the Carver governance management divide. There's a message there.
Councillor Bourdon.
I welcome Councillor Robson's admonition to adopt the advice of our team that's spoken to us this morning, but I've already heard two councillors talk about an administrative omission as though it's the sole cause of this problem, and I think anybody who's had some dealing with this over the years, and I certainly have, know it's far more than that. There has been a lot of things that contribute to the fact that we're having to do this now. Strengthen a dam, I think it was said that rules have changed, but there's land purchase things, there's development up the top that went ahead faster. There we should be in confidential really to get a proper analysis of this, because there are difficulties with regional council consents and so on that lead us here. So I welcome that, Councillor Robson. I certainly won't be shafting blame here on our fantastic team. We have to do this, and I'm really heartened because I've had residents out there, ripping me. Are you going to dig that thing up and put a trench through? Why didn't you do it that way in the first place? Well, it ain't that simple, and we can never fully explain it, but we will get it through. And that dam is necessary to stop downstream flooding. Hopefully the discussions with the landowner there will finally get that other dam built as well, because it's been very, very challenging. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers to the motion? In that case, I'll put it to you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions and carried. Thank you very much. Yes, 10.6. Yeah, he's smarty. Thank you.
Yeah, just before we introduce 10.6, the Sustainability Board update, I'd just like to, I guess, make a correction, and if we could have it noted in the minutes, please, just in relation to the hypothetical question about councillors resigning and whether or not there was an opportunity for that to, if that was the case, to align with the by-election that is currently underway. You have until Friday to advise me of your intentions or otherwise, yes. Any elected member. I'd welcome a conversation beforehand, though, if it's on anybody's mind.
Moving to 10.6, Sustainability Board. Christine, thank you.
We have reported through the Policy Committee in both September and October, and at the last meeting the elected members specifically asked us to provide updates in terms of the Sustainability Board part of the Sustainability Framework and Structure. So that is what this report seeks to do. It outlines how we're progressing in terms of the recruitment process. We were up in terms of refining the terms of reference. We're doing a little bit more work around that. And the timelines that we're going to run to, with the view that the first meeting of that board would be in December of this year, probably remotely, given the difficulties in actually physically in time in terms of transport. And in the confidential section is the current long list of candidates. Happy to speak about candidates in confidential as we're still in conversations with individual persons, but this just gives you an update on terms of the process of the board.
Thanks very much, Christine. Questions, councillors? Heidi.
Thank you. I just wanted to know what the breakdown is of the budget that we're looking at, and have we done a breakdown in this financial year for the $400,000 set aside, and how?
Yes, we have. So our estimate is that the board would cost around $140,000. Consultants to do both the stock take and the action plan would be around about 160, and then the remaining 100,000 would be utilised for the community reference group and other work so 140 for the board, 160 for consultants to undertake the stock take and the action plan. So that was as reported back in September, if I recall. And then 100,000 which would assist to fund the community reference group, which was approved when you approved the structure, and other work. And we're really waiting until we get the board on appointed, up and running, the stock take complete, and from there will flow further work. And so we wanted to ensure that there was some budget which could be utilised for that purpose.
Thank you. Other questions?
Just in regard to the community reference group, so is there a time frame for when to set that up?
The community reference group would be established after the board would be established, because we would be talking to the board about their views about the role and function of that, and so we would be clear about that when we connect with the community. But certainly as part of the structure, and as we're talking to potential candidates for the board, we are canvassing with them the concept of that community reference group, and the feedback so far has been positive.
Thank you. Can I have another? Understand the stock take part of, and in the stock, so that's gone out for tender now, and so how does that then? I'm just I guess, why has that gone out before the board gets set up? If we don't exactly know what they're planning or what they would like to see happen, is there a reason why the stock take's gone out first?
The stock take is a normal process in terms of understanding what you've got the sort of current state situation or status quo. We have canvassed it with the person who we're speaking to in terms of likely chairperson. That person was very supportive and was of the view that that work should proceed, as it would be an early input into the early conversations of the ISAB.
Thank you. Sorry. Can I just ask, so how is this working within the organisation in terms of how it's structured?
So when we reported in September, we advised you that we've established an internal reference group. The two GMs on that are myself and Nick, so the GM of Strategy and Growth and the GM of Infrastructure. We're working together with senior staff on that reference group, and then at the next level we've sort of allocated responsibilities, so the establishment of the ISAB and the establishment of the framework, given the framework should link to the City Vision project, sits in the portfolio that sits with Strategy and Growth. The stock take is sitting in Nick's area, and we're working together on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to move.
Second.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions and carried. I guess it's lunch, is it? 3 minutes? Should we call it? So, back at 1:15, is that all right? Thank you. We will reopen the meeting. We're on to 10.10. Coral, thank you.
Thank you. So this is a report about the Mayor's application for a leave of absence. And one of the issues that has come up since the report was written was whether the Mayor should receive remuneration for that time. And our staff have had some conversations with Fran Wild, the chairperson of the Remuneration Authority. And I think you could say that when we gave her some of the information about how long the Mayor would be away for, effectively just one meeting cycle, really. I mean, it sounds like a couple of months, and but when you actually analyse it, it's only sort of a one meeting cycle. And normally, when you look at their guidelines, I think that Ms Wild would say that we've probably been a bit harsh in not remunerating the Mayor. It is the Mayor's call about that, but the Council can, I just want to say, you can grant the leave of absence on full remuneration if you wanted to. That's entirely your call, and even though the Mayor has stated that he is has clarified that he would take it without leave, without pay. So really, I suppose I'm just happy to take any questions around that.
Thank you, Coral. Questions, councillors?
I've got a question. Well, I've got a question to the Chair. If this council was a mind to include an amendment whereby you are on full pay, would you accept that if this council voted for that? Because I'd certainly be happy to move something along those lines.
No, I wouldn't.
Question? Oh, sorry. Coral, I mean, in reality, there's no need for us to do anything, given that it is only one cycle. Any of us can take leave, and normally the Mayor would approve, but even if we didn't, we would just put in an apology for a missed meeting and so on. There's no actual need, as I can see it from reading the advice. What the Mayor does with the salary is up to him, but as far as we're concerned, or I'm concerned in this regard, it's until we see the new year, we don't, was that a fair interpretation of the guidelines that are in here?
Through you, Chair, I'd say I wouldn't accept that as probably the interpretation. I think that if you're going for any length of time, you should put in a leave of absence, and the standing orders say that the Mayor's leave has to be approved by the Council. It also, when you have a leave of absence, it does mean that you're not taking part in any. People know that this is quite open now, that you're not taking any part in formal or informal, or you're not required to comment on things. You really do get to have a break, if you like, from the council business. So I think that this would formalise that. I don't know if you want to say anything. Yeah.
Thanks, Coral. Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks, Tina. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against and... Oh, Tina.
I'm against.
So... Okay. Thank you. It's carried. One opposition. Thank you very much. Now, I think this moves us into public excluded. Just let me check that I haven't missed something. I have not. Thank you very much. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that to happen? Andrew and Tina, with the exception of the range of people that you have in your... So Craig, Bofa, Aaron, that would be great. All those in favour, please say aye. Against and carried. Thanks so much. We are now in